So, Don, what was it about the Civil War that enthralled and captured you so much that you wanted to immerse yourself in it?
Well, I really was immersed in it from early childhood. My mother is from Alabama. My dad is from Ohio. They met when he was in the service in the Korean War era. They married, they took up housekeeping in Ohio, but I spent time every summer, sometimes other parts of the year, visiting Alabama. I knew I had family on both sides of the war. I had a couple of uncles who actually took me to Civil War sites in Columbus, Georgia. Unfortunately, those have been developed. There's a Kmart on one of them, but we used to kick around the old entrenchments. My dad would take me to battlefields when we were there, and I just became fascinated.
What is your process in determining what story from the period that you want to tell? How do you decide what you're going to write about?
I just instinctively know. I don't really give it much thought process. Actually, the first book that I decided to write, um, really 30 years ago, and I started researching it at the time, is still not published, although it's in manuscript form, and it will be coming out hopefully next year finally. But it's a history of the 38th Ohio Regiment. It's a unit from my home area. I had family in the unit, and I have a co-author for that project, Richard Cooley. He also had family in the unit. As it turns out, our great-great-grandfathers knew each other.
One thing you researched that you surprised to find more easily than maybe you anticipated finding it?
It would have to have been my first Civil War book. It's Hell on Belle Isle, Diary of a Civil War POW. And the book kind of found me. I was actually researching the 38th Ohio book. My co-author had found a letter written by a 38th Ohio veteran to a Bryan, Ohio newspaper in the 1930s. And just in the corner of the copy he made for microfilm was a notice of a Civil War soldier's diary that was in Edgerton, Ohio. It intrigued me. I did some research. I found out that the original diary had burned in a house fire, but it had been published in serial form in a weekly newspaper. And I knew the publisher. That was I was given access to the back issues from the 1930s to make copies. And I thought, boy, it's going to be difficult to find information on the prison he was in Richmond, Virginia, not a really well-known prison, and just information about the treatment of the prisoners, his subsequent burial, those types of things. Just things fell into place for me incredibly easy. I'm kind of a bit of a spiritual person, and I almost believe that he wanted his story told, and I guess the world kind of paved the way for it.
What is your opinion on the reenactments that people do?
I think in some ways they're very good. I actually have been a reenactor for a long time. I don't do it a lot. I find that it's a very great way for me to understand the tactics of the war when I write about them, some of the common things that the soldiers experienced. I think some people on the downside, I think, use them to maybe glorify the war. They don't, I think, appreciate just how bloody and nasty and horrible the war really was. But I think from an educational viewpoint, I've had kids view reenactments, or I've gone and talked to schools in uniform and talked about the life of the soldier, and I think that has great educational value.
Do you think there's a value to the camaraderie of it as well?
I think there definitely is. I have made some incredible friends in the reenactment community, and many of those friends have turned out to be great resources in the historian community. It's led to me to learn or reach very knowledgeable people to serve as editors of my books. Although I'm an independent publisher, I go through a very strict vetting process, historical accuracy, fact checking, and I've made some great friends who have been invaluable in that regard.
Did you ever think about or contemplate tackling this subject as a work of fiction?
It has crossed my mind. I've dabbled in fiction through the years. I love to read fiction. I just feel that my talents lie more toward nonfiction. I've never had any fiction published, but I can't say that I never will. That's always been in the back of my mind.
Give us one experience in doing the research for the paranormal stuff that really shook you and that stuck with you.
The one that led me to write the book came about, and I've had through the years some odd experiences at Gettysburg. 2 years ago, my grandson and I went to Gettysburg. This was for history. He had been there with us once years ago when he was quite young. He was 14 at the time, and we went there just to study history, but I registered as a journalist so that I could get some behind the scenes things while we're there. One of the offerings given to us was a ghost investigation. And I thought, being a teenager, I didn't want him to be bored. And I told him about this. He said, "Yeah, sounds cool, Grandpa, let's do it." So I called up and they told us that, yeah, we'll take you to Sachs Bridge. And I'm thinking, Sachs Bridge, when I had seen it, my wife and I actually honeymooned in Gettysburg many, many years ago. Sachs Bridge is just an ancient, old, dilapidated, covered bridge. Didn't really impress me a whole lot. But the gentleman I was talking to said, "You will like Sachs Bridge." And I thought, okay. So that evening we meet up with a young lady who seemed very knowledgeable, and she takes us to Sachs Bridge. She brings out all sorts of different equipment. Now, mind you, I'm thinking this is just a touristy thing. I was not expecting anything of it. I'm here to entertain my grandson. So we chose different items, electromagnetic field meters, EMF meters. The theory is that the spirits give off, the electromagnetic energy. We used a laser grid. And we also use something I was not familiar with. It's called a ghost box. It's a little, basically it scans radio stations, frontwards, backwards, AM, FM. You set the speed, and the theory is it creates white noise that a spirit can use to communicate. If you're familiar with EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, where you get recordings, where you don't hear with your ear, but you do get recordings. So okay, we'll try this. Well, this investigation was to be 2 hours. And there were a lot of other people on the bridge. I was not impressed, although the young lady seemed very knowledgeable. We go across the bridge, we go out on the field. She proceeds to tell us about what took place around Sachs Bridge. I had no clue, but it was one vast field hospital toward the end and after the battle. The Confederates used the bridge in their retreat route, left some of their more severely wounded men there, some of their prisoners who also were badly wounded. They didn't think they could stand a wagon ride south, just were left in the open air and in the buildings around here. I did not know that. I found that interesting, but we're there for almost 2 hours and we had gotten like nothing. Well, I won't say quite nothing. With the spirit box, she asked questions throughout this time period. At one time, she said, "Can you tell us what color coat one of us is wearing?" And we did get a clear blue, and I was wearing a blue coat, but I was underwhelmed at this point. We're going back to the bridge. The crowd's thinning out. Our guide, her name was Destiny, kind of jumped and said that, "Did you see that?" And she had seen a shadow figure. Well, I believed her. I didn't see it. Neither did my grandson. We go back across the bridge, go into the woods on the other side. My grandson had a similar experience, and he obviously had seen something and was a bit affected by it. I, again, didn't see it. It was a shadow figure. So by then we go back to the bridge. It's totally empty. Everybody else had left. Our 2 hours is up, but our guide started asking some questions, and she says, anyone here with us? We got a clear yes. Hey, this is kind of cool. She said, well, how many of you are there? We got a 7, 8, 9. And I'm kind of perking up. So, all right, this is kind of interesting. And it kind of faded out. It was getting cold. It was after time to leave, so she was going to start the car and warm it up. So my grandson and I are sitting there, and I thought, okay, I drew on my study of the war. Like, okay, if I were somebody. Oh, and I forgot to mention. She said, "What year is it?" And we got somewhat garbled, but very clear 3, and it sounded very much like 1863. To us. I thought that's kind of cool too. That's the year, of course, the Battle of Gettysburg. So Connor and I are sitting there. She's starting the car, and I said, "Do you like jokes?" Got a very clear, polite "Yes, sir." And I'm kind of sitting up. All right. So, do you like music? Got a very clear, almost an inflection in the voice, like he was insulted. Of course. And my grandson, quick thinking, he says, can you play for us? And we get a yes, sir. And then we proceeded to get guitar music, kind of fading in and out, but definite of the period acoustic guitar. And by then, Destiny, our guide, had come back. I looked at her. Her eyes are wide open. Her mouth is open. She's staring at this spirit box. This music went on for several minutes, maybe 10 minutes. When it finally faded out, I said, wow, you're good. And the voice says, thank you. And I said, can you play some more? Yes, sir. And we got more music. We had mandolin and harmonica kick in with music. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, this is just crazy. That this has to be a hoax. Absolutely has to be a hoax. So I'm trying to figure out how they did this. So on the one hand, Destiny seemed very sincere, and I didn't really think she would pull something on us. Being a journalist for many, many years, I've kind of developed a sense for when somebody's trying to pull one over on you. But no,
Sure.
this is, and then after that, and I'll kind of wind this up. But she said again, is anyone with us? Yes. What's your name? And we got a clear 3-syllable on. Or can you enunciate more clearly? Several times we got this name. There was a very clear on and like an S sound at the end, but we couldn't quite make it out. But then she proceeds to ask, how old are you? We got a 20, and then we got a captain.
Oh.
Whoa. And so I'm asking, where are you from? We couldn't quite understand it. I start rattling off states, a number of states. When I got to Ohio, I got a yes, sir. And I said, oh, my grandson and I are from Ohio. And both the EMF meters that Connor and I held, which we couldn't get to barely blip the whole night, went to the very top level and stayed there for several seconds and came back down. Just absolutely amazing. And I'm still thinking at this point, this has to be a hoax. And there was more to it. But at the very end, Destiny said, are you hurt or were you hurt? And this still bothers me to this day. We got this blood curdling, just sheer mix of terror and pain, male voice screaming, a prolonged scream, and then a woman crying at the end. And that kind of put the end of that. Some other people came on the bridge, we left. Now I went home intent on proving that this was a hoax. The more I researched, the more I talked to people, the more I found out, no, you can't broadcast to this type of machine. This is how they work, and this probably happened. When I decided to write the book is when I started looking into the historical context. Said, okay, did any Ohio captains die at Gettysburg? Yes, there were 7 of them. Okay, what were their names, ages? One of them jumped out at me. His name is Mahlon Briggs. 3 syllables, clear on. He may have died at Sachs Bridge. He was mortally wounded day 1 of the battle, was captured, and he could have been one of those left at Sachs Bridge to die. That more than anything I've ever experienced just made an impact on me.
someone who has been publishing for a very long time and it has its own brand, and you publish under your own banner, give the folks out there a sense of encouragement in terms of keeping with it. What is some advice you would give somebody who wants to pursue it in that direction?
If you really want to make a living at it, you have to go in with your eyes wide open, knowing that it isn't easy. It is very hard work. It's also can be extremely fun and extremely rewarding. The thing for me is publicity. I have to work at it. I really just, I sit down and I do lists. This is who I want to talk to. This is what I want to get out of it. And you have to have almost a daily list, and it's a constant churn. If you don't publicize your book, no one's going to know it's there, and no one's going to buy it. No one's going to read it.
You cherish much about being an indie published author?
The freedom and the independence is just incredible. I know that when I put my imprint on a book, it is what I want it to be. We've also published books by other authors, and it's rewarding for me to work with them and to share my vision and also respect theirs, and just, being able to make someone else's work better and successful is almost as exciting for me as having my own work be out there and be successful. But yeah, being able to just do it my way is just incredibly valuable and rewarding.
What's different about publishing someone else's work as opposed to publishing your own? What do you remove from the process?
I try to really open myself to the author, to their message, to their personality, to what they're hoping to accomplish with the book. And I really try to remove my judgment from it. I think my role, where I feel I bring the most value, is just in clarity, in conciseness, of maybe cutting out extraneous things, of really having the writer focus on what their goal, what their intent is. But when it comes down to really their voice and their intent, I try to stay out of the way of that.